Hello, all. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. We have another episode on Gelvin Valley Farming Simulator 15. Yes, another episode. Oh, we've been in the middle of planting, and actually, you know something? Here's a perfect place to test something out. I did a little something with the map. I kind of want to see how it turned out. And maybe what I'll do is, well, I don't want to totally screw it up. I guess what I want to see is if I can go through this fence. Aha. Yes, it's not letting me through down here. Just previously, see these lower two lines here on this post? Y'all by this point probably remember the harvesting difficulties I had on field 38, where the combine several times tried to poke its nose through the fence and it succeeded. I had to drop the header and wasn't able to bring it back through the fence because once it's through, it would lift the header and then it would run into what a plane. Like you see these three strands of barbed wire. It's a hard object. So what I did, and this was some advice Atomic gave me, was to try to fix the rest of the fence. I'm sorry, you can't see very well here. What am I doing here? Here, let me go back here where you can see. Now there's a plane on the bottom part of the fence also. Even though it looks a little bit different here, there's a plane in there. And I'd like to show you, maybe just real quick, kind of what I did if anybody's interested. I'll switch over to the editor. We'll see if this is still loaded up here. Okay, I did it in kind of a different area. This was just in a random field. So I came down here, and like if you click on one of these, it's going to be a plane. See how that's a plane? It isn't strands of wire at all. It's kind of a clear object and someone painted barbed wire on it, but it's a hard object. And the way you can tell that is over here by this little rigid body thing. And the rigid body, it's static, so it isn't going to move. And the collision mask basically says that anything's going to run into it, you know, whether you're a player, tractor, whatever. So what I wanted to do was to take a similar concept, and I would have just copied this and moved it down lower, because previously there was no hard object down here, no plane. And because if you do move this one down, it would move the strands of barbed wire, and then it would look strange when down here, you know, all you have is two strands. So previously, this was it, and the reason I always had trouble is this was open. And I think the mapper did it probably for a good reason. You know, the fewer hard objects you put on a map, the fewer that you have to have, the better the performance. Because every hard object that's in there, the game has to make calculations so that it knows when you run into it. I mean, it has to remember where these objects are and what kinds of things can run into it, what kinds of things can go through it. Whereas if it's just rendering an image and anything can go through it and it isn't a hard object, that's a lot easier on computing resources. So it could be the map author put this in there figuring it would stop most everything from going through the fence or have an illusion rather, that the fence was all a hard object, and then he didn't do it down here, maybe hoping that one fewer hard object would make better computing. I don't know. I can't explain it for him. What I did was I made my own. You can create your own primitives in here. I created a plane and I scaled it. I mean, there's all kinds of tools where you can scale it, and I put one in down here. So we'll just, oh, well, I tried to click on it. And let's go back here. We'll get it because I know this one here is where it's at. So I added a plane to the wire object, and we'll see it here. Oh, it isn't showing it visibility. See, it's a totally different color. I could make it clear or whatever, but I called it a rigid body. I just made it invisible so you don't see it. And in game, of course, we didn't see it. And I gave it the same properties as the plane that's over it. It fits exactly the same area, except it's on the lower side of the fence. Well, that's only this one section, of course. So then what I did is there's this handy little feature in here where you can replace objects. And so you just pick the object you want to replace, that's the target, and you put it in there with the one that you want to replace them all with, and you hit replace, and it's going to do the whole map wherever this 2 wires 10-meter was found. So we have kind of this area here, like I put it in here, you can see it up there, I'm pretty sure on here you'll see it, like I didn't put these in there, like if we just open a random one, sure enough, there it is. So, and then save the map, so it should have added it, so long as it was named something like this, it should have added it everywhere. And it appears it's working, because when I try to crouch, previously it probably would have let me crawl through here. Now it isn't letting me do anything. Proof in the pudding, I guess, will be, when we go to harvest it next time, we'll see if, we'll see how cooperative the combine is. So, we are planting barley busily. So we'll continue on that. And actually, you know what? I just thought of something else. We're barely going to make the corner, and I'm just going to... Where is... Let me see here. This is where I can use the teleport. See, there's a town up here on the hill, right? Right. Is there anything anywhere? I'm going to get it so I can fly. Well, I thought I put that in. Oh, except I gotta hit enter. What I'm looking for is a clock tower. I'm pretty sure the base map had one in it. What I'm trying to see is if Gelvin Valley has one in it. I'll just fly over here real quick. I'm not sure that it does. Yeah, I'm not seeing one here. Is there anywhere else we have it? Any town to speak of? Not really. Sometimes when I'm messing around in here, I'll listen to YouTube videos, and a lot of times, I think I've mentioned it before, I enjoy listening to, my sound is sure loud. I don't know, let me quiet this down. Oops, if I don't want to do that. This is the one I want. I think, oh yeah, I'm way higher than what I want to be. Put that down to 50. Hop back in. There, that's better. Anyway, a lot of times when I'm messing around out here, working on mods or whatever, I'll listen to YouTube, and I think I've mentioned a couple times that I really enjoy listening to my friend Atomic67, the story videos. I think I've been through almost all of his videos at least twice, some more times than that. And I also enjoy listening to other storytellers, such as Reefy 1952, to name at least one. And I haven't watched his entire library yet. I think it's larger than Atomic 67's. But I'm in the middle of his Old Ridge series, and this past week, I think it was episode 21. And the reason I was just looking for the clock tower is, I tell you what, in that episode, the entire time the clapper and the bell was active, it was just clanging away. I don't remember how long his episode was. Oh, it had to be more than half an hour. But the entire time it was just bong, bong, just kind of going like that. And I think what I learned in the comments down there is he had just fast forwarded something on the map, and it was, causing the chimes or whatever to go incessantly. And the bell tower chimes, by the way, it's a special script. The Giants wrote it, I think, for the most part, but they didn't implement it. I don't think. I don't think they implemented it in their map. I could be mistaken on that, or maybe it's a working of the clock. I forget. And my version of Farm Sim 15, I don't think it even had the bells in the map directory. When you open a giant script and you start reading it and you see the assets that it's calling up, you can tell if it's available or not, when you go looking for the assets. Well, one of the assets, of course, is the sound of the bell clapper. And if I recall correctly, it's stored on like the main hard drive where the game is installed, or that's where the script said it would be. But I think when I went and searched, I can't drive straight here. When I went and searched for it, I couldn't locate it in the game files. So the Old Ridge Farm app the modder must have put it in there. They must have implemented a script for it and all that. But I do know the Giants wrote one, and they just must have decided, maybe at the last minute that they didn't want to implement it for whatever reason, for reals. And I implemented it, I think, in another map, except I screwed up on the bell sound, so I still need to fix that. But anyway, it was just kind of funny listening to this episode, and what I'll try to do is put a link to it in the description down here if anybody's interested. Of course, I know one person who faithfully listens is Reefy1952 himself, so I guess he can go back and listen to his own episode again. It was just kind of a hoot. And I think I've already mentioned it's challenging. I really have to listen actively when I listen to his stories, which are really good. I'm really enjoying the Old Ridge series. It's the accent that's tough for me. Being an American, it's something I'm not used to. So a lot of times it's challenging for me to listen to his stories because I have to pay I have to pay attention to him, if I'm going to get anything out of him. Versus, if I'm writing a Lewis script or something and I need my brains for that. What can I say? What they say, men can't multitask. Oop, did I miss a spot right there? Maybe I'll get him again. Well, I don't think so. I'm not sure what that spot is. The last time I planted, I think I did no-till, and I gotta say, working things up sure makes it one whale of a lot easier to plant, because you can see where you're going. There we go. That field down. Yeah, we're just under halfway on the seeds. I think I've put, what is this now? Oh. 3 fields of barley? Yeah. Well, I don't know what to do. Barley, I know, is worth more than wheat, so I think maybe I won't plant any wheat this round, but maybe I need to put in some other things. As we head up the hill here, the next field has a pretty nasty slope on it, and it's going to be challenging planting this. So maybe what I'll do is, how do I do? Oops, something, I better get out and turn this off, because I'm going to have trouble with that. If I try to, there we go to wheat. How about we put in some canola? Because in real life, even though I've tweaked the bales so they stay put on the field, in real life this would be a little difficult to do bale handling. Oh, and that's the other thing. See, this is where I say I really enjoy listening to these stories. Um, and this one for Old Ridge Farm that Reefy's doing is just wonderful. He he came up with a very clever story addition, if you will, or story angle to explain why he wasn't going to do any bail handling. And I just thought it was really cool. I think in the story, he's working for someone. I don't remember entirely all the details. And his boss, if I recall correctly, had an accident, a farming accident back in the day, where he got his arm stuck in a baler or something like that. And the machinery didn't totally mangle it, but emergency services were called. And the long story short is they weren't able to save his arm. So they had to cut it off, amputate. I don't remember which arm he had in the story. But based on that, he got rid of his baler, said he'd never have one on the place again. I don't think he so much wanted to even look at a baler or anything. And if any bales were ever needed on the farm, or any straw, grass, whatever, you would have to gather it loose, or you would have to buy the bales from someone else. And I remember listening to this. I've heard of such accidents like that before. I'm pretty sure we all have heard, or maybe know somebody that's had something like that, and worse. That was exactly where my mind went, because you know what? I'm no good at bail handling either. I just use the auto load stuff to take care of it real quick, and because I'm all thumbs, when it comes to keyboard steering, let alone keyboard bail handling. So, but that was my first thought, when I listened to a story, is he's probably writing something in his script so that he doesn't have to handle bails either. So, it's just interesting listening to these stories, because I keep rolling around in my head wondering if I could try that at some point. I on here on one of these episodes, or a couple episodes, I read some stories to everybody. I mean, they're stories my father told me, but I don't know if I have the creative energy to be able to put a story together. So I'm still kind of ruminating on that, but it's interesting listening to these other videos, because you can pick up a number of ideas. So, but I mean, those even are someone else's ideas. So I don't want to just steal Reefy's ideas, although I left plenty of my own after after listening to the clanging bell the entire time. I wasn't the only one that left a comment in there. It was kind of funny. I may have mentioned in the last video that this has been a kind of a different weekend for me. Had a lot going on, personal life, and then on top of it, just a number of deaths. With acquaintances that we know, with my son-in-law and his family members that passed. I had a great uncle pass away. My business partner's father died. And so today and yesterday was funerals for these men here locally. The other ones are more in the Midwest part of the country, and I won't be going to those. But it got me thinking about some things, and I'd be curious what people think of this. Like I mentioned earlier, when I'm modding or even playing the game and not recording, there's a lot of times, I'll listen to YouTube in the background, and some of the stuff that I listen to or enjoy listening to are interviews of people that maybe have some historical significance. Maybe it was someone that lived in the past, was a general in a war, whatever, so I enjoy hearing history type things, or even current. There's a couple channels, I don't follow them too regularly, but they interview people that I would never come into contact with, or would even want to, really. And I'm not trying to be snobbish in saying that, um, but here's what I mean. There's a channel that I've seen. Oh, what's it called? I think it's called Soft White Underbelly, and so he is interviewing people that probably a lot of them feel like they're forgotten by society. Maybe have experienced some knocks in life, and their life took a different path than most would, or they have something unique about them that causes them day-to-day issues, whatever it is. I mean, it's just some very interesting interviews. You don't see the interviewer. You occasionally hear him interject, but I think kind of in typical documentary style, he's fairly quiet with the questions and wants to let the people on camera do as much talking and sharing as possible. So for example, he's had people on there like drug dealers, um, some ladies that unfortunately got into prostitution, or um, maybe there's people who maybe some would just despise for whatever reason. Let's say someone who's a racist, and he'll interview them. Or I think there was one here the other day he had where some poor fellow had schizophrenia. So you kind of get a flavor of what I mean. Not all of these people are people you would just want to walk up to on the street and have a conversation with. And I don't know how this guy, gets his contacts or figures out who he's going to interview. I don't know how he induces these people to sit down, to be interviewed. I don't think they're paid, but I really don't know. And sometimes, I mean, I think deep within the human psyche is the desire for someone to listen to you and to be heard and have a voice and outlet to share whatever they want to share with the world. Maybe this is their way to do it. And I since have found a couple other channels that do this. I think Soft White Underbelly is American. I think I found one in Britain. I forget what it's called. To where, and yeah, I mean, just fascinating things. Maybe they're interviewing people who've committed murders, the mafia. Just runs a gambit, in terms of who they get to sit for an interview, and just to see perspective. And I don't know, for me, I hear some of those things and it makes me all the more thankful for a lot of the sheltered life I've had and opportunities, if you will, and learning to be grateful. That never hurts anybody, at the very least. But anyway, I love listening to interviews and hearing about people's life, what they've done, their history, their background, things they've learned, that they want to pass on to another generation, and bring all this back to kind of the funerals and everything that have been going on the past couple days. One of the men that died. Oh my, this is slipping all over the field. Yeah, I told you there's a slope here. One of the men that died was a great uncle of mine. I don't even remember how old he was. But that means I have, is it 3 great uncles left? And none of them are spring chickens. I think one of them is north of 90. Another is, or both of the others I think are in their 80s. And, one thing I tried to do with my own grandfather before he died is I got this book. It was called a grandpa book. Actually, I copied it from someone else. I think it was my dad had it for his grandfather. And what it is it's a series of questions that you would ask your grandfather, or it's kind of in a book, and you hand it to your grandfather and say, can you answer the questions with your own handwriting, fill it out, and it's all kinds of questions like, when were you born, who were your parents, who are your siblings, where were you born, what was your occupation, what was your hobbies, and so forth and so on. And just all kinds of questions that your grandpa in this case could answer, and you'd learn about him. Well, I tried to do that with my grandfather, and it just never happened. And we're all different. He wasn't a very, well, let's just say writing wasn't his forte. And so the idea of him sitting down and writing, I probably should have known better. What I should have done in retrospect is try to set up a time, to take a couple hours here and there, wherever I could, to just interview him. Sit down and ask questions, get him on tape. I don't think he would have wanted to sit there in front of a camera, but try to have a conversation with him and see, and just ask all these questions so I have some record. And I mean, there's a lot of things that I know about him, and his kids are still around, all of them. I just think about my great uncles, and that would have been my grandfather's brothers. There's a lot of information about my grandpa that I could probably get from them about, when he was a younger man. Um, just lots of information I could get from him if I take the time to do it. And that's just it. Here, I can't remember if I mentioned this. I got a GoPro here a week or two, just a couple, 3 weeks ago. I can't remember. I was going to use it to get some footage up on the farm, maybe. And that can be one purpose, but, to somehow justify the amount of money I put into that dumb thing, um, maybe I could use it to try to do some interviews. And I just be curious, if anybody listening has ever attempted to do that before. I'm sure I'd have to spend some time coming up with a decent list of questions. I mean, shoot, I'm an accountant. What do I know about interviewing somebody? I'm not even a YouTube broadcaster. I just upload silly videos to YouTube. Um, so I'd have to figure out questions. I'd probably have to run off a script. I don't think I could just do that freehand. Or I mean, it'd be a total disaster if I tried to do it free. Or I don't know. I could almost hear Atomic yelling at me if he's listening to this. Do it in small pieces. Don't do it all in one thing and edit it and all that jazz. And he's right, of course. I would need to do all that. But that's kind of just something I've been rolling around in my mind. I think it would be very interesting, and these aren't something I would ever make public. I mean, it'd be more for family keepsake, I think, or for the family of someone, whoever it is that I would try to interview. I doubt whether they would even want it on YouTube, and I don't know that it'd be of interest to anybody on YouTube. I mean, we tend to be interested in people we know, and I know I've clicked on a couple interviews previously on YouTube. Oh, there was like one that I remember who was at the theater maybe when President Lincoln was shot and killed. I mean, Lincoln was a president back in the 1860s during the Civil War, and the Civil War had just ended, and somebody, uh, when he was at Ford's Theater, shot and killed him, assassinated our president, and there was someone there who either witnessed it or was in that same general location, and when he was an old guy, when they had sound equipment, everything to record him, they had an interview with him. Well, I mean, that's obviously something of general interest to the country as a whole, so, of course, that'd be one I'd be interested in listening to, but probably for my relatives and whatnot, I don't know that they'd even be of general interest, even on YouTube. So I probably would just keep them offline. and wouldn't put them on there anyways unless I had permission. But has anybody ever tried that? Um, like I say, I kind of wish with my grandfather I would have tried a different approach. I know he did it one time for his kids. He recorded himself on a tape, a cassette tape back in the day, and then I think one of his daughters typed it up on a typewriter or something to kind of have a written record of it, if you will, because he just couldn't. Yeah, he just wasn't a writer. And he's one of those. I know back in the day he only had, I think, an eighth grade education. Never went to high school, so it could be just never got in the habit of having to write or practicing it, knowing kind of what that's like. So, well, live and learn. So I'm kind of contemplating doing that. I've already reached out to one of my cousins, my extended family of one of my great uncles, and he, of course, he's in the middle of harvest himself at the moment. He farms berries, so probably the last thing he wants to entertain is a question on this at the moment, but we'll see what he says. If he thinks it would, or if something like that would be valuable to him, and he thinks his dad would stand for it, then I may approach him. And previously, this great uncle of mine, I've taken him to lunch, and oh my, I'm weaving all over the road. And it was just fascinating to me. Anybody that loves history, would appreciate, I think, talking to older people that can tell you how things were back in the day. It's just different perspective, that I don't have, or any of us would have, depending on our age. But he talked about, I think it was in World War II. I don't remember how old he was, but or no, excuse me, was it World War II? Yeah, I think it was World War II. Metal, steel, rubber, those kinds of things were scarce, and it was right during the era when tractors were coming into their own, but they didn't have one. He grew up in the era where it was horse-drawn equipment. Oh my, I need to have my blinkers and lights on. He grew up in the era of horse-drawn equipment, and so, but he told me, I remember at lunch, where he was and what the day was like, when they got their very first tractor on the farm. And you could just see it in his eyes again. It was like he was reliving the whole thing. And it was just fun to hear him talk about that. And now, we just don't think a tractor is any big deal anymore. And maybe we look for more and more bells and whistles. But the whole idea of a tractor is kind of old hat. Well, to talk to someone who saw it with their own eyes for the first time, when all they were used to previously was kind of a four-footed creature to haul their equipment and stuff around through the fields, that was a big deal. And I mean, there was a time era in there. The change was just tremendous. And I know we still have lots of change in our life too. The equipment's definitely improved by leaps and bounds, from when I worked on the farm. But I'll tell you, I think going from horses to tractors is a bigger change than any of us have experienced, more recently. Anyway, just something I'm kind of rolling around the old cranium. And I already see I've taken up your time for another half hour, so I think I'm going to call the video here. Thank you so much for watching and listening and stopping by, and we'll see you again on the next one. Bye-bye for now.